Who will judge my crime? The alien killer asked the Galactic Council. One human raised her hand. The podium was 17 centimeters lower than the next one up, and the step creaked when she put her weight on it. One human in a gray uniform with no markings stood where no human had stood before. The Galactic Council's chamber stretched 47 meters, and every dimension was a statement. In 72 hours, the procedural window would close, and no one would judge the crime. She reached into her pocket. The membrane sheet came out folded in thirds. The creases were worn white from handling. The human seal pressed into the material caught the chamber light, not printed, irreversible. She set it down without ceremony. The accused stood across from her. Shear was ancient chitinous, tall enough that his shadow reached the second tier. He hissed in low frequencies that made the air in her chest hum. Who will judge my crime? The question hung. No one moved. Which of you is civilized enough? Dr. Veth Koran did not look at the council. They looked at the membrane sheet. Then they raised their hand. No warning, no declaration, no mercy. I'll be honest. What I saw that day changed what I thought preparation meant. Stay close. 3 months earlier, Archivist Saranvel filed the morning observation log from Tier 1. The chamber was empty except for the maintenance crew and the human delegation. Saranvel's mandibles clicked 3 times in succession, a stress test they could not control. The click count would rise with the day. The humans sat in the observation gallery. The gallery was a ledge, not a tier. The ledge was 4 meters below the lowest podium. The acoustics favored lower voices. Humans spoke at a register the chamber dampened by design. Saranvel knew this because they had filed the acoustic calibration reports themselves. They had filed them 7 years ago when the humans first arrived. The reports had not been reviewed since. Veth Koran sat with hands folded. A tablet rested on their lap. The screen showed the same 47 pages Saranvel had seen bookmarked at different passages for 3 months. Not random reading, methodical revision. The same codes, the same principles visited in a rotating pattern. Page 3 on Monday, page 12 on Tuesday, page 29 on Wednesday. Then back to page 3. Saranvel had watched this pattern for 90 days. They had not filed it as unusual. They had filed it as routine. Saranvel approached with the vote tally. The corridor outside the chamber was narrow. The walls were gray. The lighting was calibrated to favor species with bioluminescent skin. Humans looked pale in this light, washed out, less significant. Saranvel had filed a note about this once. The note had been marked aesthetic non-essential and archived. The council had made its decision in private. That was the point. Voting rights suspended, Saranvel said. The mandibles clicked. 3 times, 9-1, you may observe, you may not decide. Veth looked up. Their face did not change. They reached into their inner pocket and touched something. Saranvel saw the edge of a membrane sheet, worn at the creases. Veth did not pull it out. They simply checked that it was there, then returned to the tablet. May I ask, Saranvel said, what you read? The foundational legal codes, Veth said. All 47 of them. For what purpose? Veth's thumb moved across the tablet. They did not answer immediately. Instead, they reached to their other pocket and withdrew a small card, handwritten, shorthand symbols. 3 questions Saranvel would later learn, though Veth never read them aloud. Veth checked the card, put it away, and spoke. For the purpose of knowing them, Veth said. If I know them, I can use them. If I can use them, I can help. Saranvel filed this. They did not understand the answer. They filed it anyway. The war crime accusation arrived the next cycle. 80,000 civilian dead. The numbers came in a standard data packet. Saranvel processed it. They filed it under capital case pending. Then they stopped. They looked at the number again. 80,000. They had filed casualty reports before. Never this many. Never with both sides demanding trial. The council had 24 hours to assign a judge. The procedural window was law. The law was older than most species in the room. 4,000 years old, written by the Asan before the Verdians had discovered fire, before the humans had discovered agriculture. Saranvel filed the case notice. They watched the pattern form. A Galactian delegate stood first. Insufficient cultural understanding, they said. The phrase was 6 months old. It had been used against younger species for 400 years. Saranvel noted the citation in the log. They noted that the Galactian delegate did not look at the human gallery when they spoke. They looked at the ceiling, at the acoustic panels, anywhere but the ledge. A Corvin followed. Emotional volatility, they said, the same excuse, new face. Saranvel's mandibles clicked. 4 times, they filed the Corvin statement. They noted the delegate's hands were steady, not volatile at all. A Sethic said simply, "Not our role." Institutional memory as a shield against accountability. The silence in the chamber grew fuller with each refusal. The weight accumulated. Saranvel felt it in their thorax. A pressure. A sense that the chamber was filling with something invisible. Veth sat in the gallery, hands folded. The tablet showed the 47 pages. The membrane sheet remained in the pocket, creases deepening. Saranvel watched Veth's face. It showed nothing. Not disappointment, not anger, not surprise. Just the same calm they had shown for 3 months. Junior observer Ren watched from the newest species bench. Ren had been granted observer status 8 months prior. They did not speak against elders. They had not yet earned that frequency. They sat with their limbs tucked close. Their eyes moved between the delegates and the human gallery. They were watching, learning, waiting. Delegate Voss of the Verdians cited commercial law precedent. Convener Thal of the Fraud offered practical concerns wrapped in patronizing tones. The logistics alone, Thal said, the translation requirements, the cultural mediation. A human judge would need support structures we simply do not have. The council relaxed into its rhythm. The refusal was becoming tradition, a dance, a performance, each delegate playing their part. Then the fraud delegate laughed. It happened when Veth's hand rose. Not to speak, just a small movement adjusting the tablet. The fraud delegate saw it from the second tier and laughed openly. "Of course you're not prepared," the delegate said. "No offense, but your entire species arrived in this assembly 12 years ago. 12 years. We have delegates who have served longer than your species has been in this building." The laughter was brief. It served as institutional armor. The council relaxed, assuming the conversation was over. Veth's hand returned to the folded position. They did not look up. They did not smile. They simply continued reading. Page 3. The same page Saranvel had seen them read on Monday, and the Monday before, and the Monday before that. Saranvel filed the moment. Later, they would understand what they had seen. At the time, it looked like silence. It looked like submission. It looked like a human who had accepted their place on the ledge. The procedural window narrowed. 18 hours remained. No judge had been named. The accused Shear stood in the holding annex. His low-frequency hiss carried through the ventilation. Saranvel filed the sound under atmospheric disturbance. They did not file what the sound meant. Desperation. Challenge. A creature who had committed atrocities demanding that someone be civilized enough to judge him. In the observation gallery, Veth opened the membrane sheet for the first time in Saranvel's sight. Not to read, to annotate. A stylus moved in the margins. Handwriting accumulated. 3 months of refinement compressed into marginal notes. The human seal, pressed deep into the material, caught the corridor light when Veth shifted. Saranvel approached. "You write on the document." "I refine it," Veth said. "For what case?" "For the case that will come." Saranvel's mandibles clicked 5 times. "The council has not assigned a human judge in 4,000 years. "Then they have not met a human who prepared," Veth said. They folded the membrane sheet along its worn creases. They returned it to the pocket. They returned to the tablet. Page 3 again. Saranvel noticed the bookmark had moved, not to page 4, to page 12. The Tuesday page, but it was not Tuesday. It was the day of the war crime. The day everything changed. The corridor outside the archive vault smelled of recycled coolant. The sulfur tang lingered in the air. It was the smell of old systems. Systems that had been running before humans knew what stars were. Saranvel filed reports in Vault Corridor 7, where the legal code was housed. They found Veth there twice, surrounded by case precedents, cross-referencing on a secondary tablet. "How many cases?" Saranvel asked. 2,847, Veth said. They did not look up. I need to understand the pattern of refusal before I can address the pattern of judgment. Saranvel filed the number. They did not understand the context. They understood the method. The number was exact, not approximate, not about 2,000. Exactly 2,847. Veth had counted them. Veth had read them. Veth had prepared. The hidden roster revealed itself gradually, not through declaration, through presence. A human scholar in cultural law seen entering Corridor 7 at the 3rd hour. A specialist in evidence interpretation, arriving with a tablet of xenological precedent. A third figure, younger, carrying handwritten notes that matched Veth's shorthand. They met in the Restoration Chamber Annex, where deliberation happened outside the official record. They met at hours when the council was not in session. They met in a room with no acoustic calibration, a room where all voices carried equally. Saranvel observed without observing. They filed atmospheric notes. They did not file the roster. Something in the method made them hesitate. Something in the quiet precision of the meetings made them want to protect what they saw, not from malice, from misunderstanding. 12 hours remained in the procedural window. The council deadlocked. Kishir of the dominant elders leaned forward. Their eye clusters arranged in ascending height tracked each refusal. They said nothing. Their stillness was a technique younger species could not replicate. It was not emptiness. It was fullness. The stillness of a mind that had seen 4,000 years of these moments and knew how they ended. Sheer in the annex hissed louder. Then no one will judge me. No one is civilized enough. The question carried. It reached the observation gallery. Veth's hands unfolded. They touched the membrane sheet in their pocket. They checked the index card. They did not speak. They did not stand, but something in their posture changed. A slight straightening, a readiness. 6 hours remained. The fraud delegate repeated the laughter, this time at Shear's challenge. We are not a criminal court, they said. We are a council of civilizations. We do not judge, we govern. Saranvel filed the statement. They noted the contradiction. The council had tried capital cases before. The refusal was new. The refusal was targeted. It was not about capability. It was about hierarchy, about who had the right to look down from the high podiums. 4 hours remained. The procedural window closed at the 7th hour of the cycle. After that, the case would dissolve into administrative void. The 80,000 dead would remain unjudged. The precedent would stand, and the next time the refusal would be easier. The next time it would not even require a vote. Veth stood. The movement was small, a shift from seated to standing, but humans did not stand in the gallery. They observed. They did not approach the podiums. They did not walk to the visitors' podium, the lowest platform, the 17-centimeter step. The step creaked. The chamber froze. Shear turned. His chitinous plates shifted. The low-frequency hiss stopped. You are the human, he said. Your civilization is recent. Veth placed both hands on the podium. The membrane sheet was not yet visible. The index card remained in the pocket. They spoke in a register the chamber dampened by design. But this time, the chamber heard them. Something in the silence made the acoustics work differently. Or maybe it was not the acoustics. Maybe it was the weight of what Veth carried. Ask me if I'm prepared, Veth said. The fraud delegate laughed again. Of course you're not. No offense, but your entire species arrived in this assembly 12 years ago. What could you possibly know about our laws, about our history, about the weight of judgment? Veth repeated unchanging, ask me. The repetition created pressure. The laughter died. The silence that followed was not the silence of refusal. It was the silence of a door opening, a door that had been locked for 4,000 years. Kishir leaned forward, the eye clusters focused. Dr. Veth, what are your credentials? Veth reached into the inner pocket. The membrane sheet came out, worn at the creases. The human seal pressed so deep it caught light. They set it on the podium without ceremony. Then they reached deeper. A second document, thicker. The framework. The work of 3 months, 3 scholars, 6 years of archive study. The paper was plain. The words were plain. The method was not. For the last 6 years, Veth said, I have held dual certification from the Human Academic Collective and the Council Archives Division. I have memorized the foundational legal codes of all 47 voting species. I have studied the 47 core principles underlying interstellar law. I have prepared for the possibility that I would be called to judge a capital case. Saranvel's mandibles clicked, not 3 times, not 5. A single click involuntary that Saranvel had never made before. It was the click of recognition, of surprise, of something breaking open. Veth paused. They looked at the council. They looked at Sheer. They spoke directly to the moment, not to the room, to the idea that had built the room. I prepared because I knew one day the council would strip my species' voice. And I wanted to prove that stripping our vote does not strip our mind. The chamber went still. Kishir's mandibles clicked, not stress. Saranvel recognized the register, approval, a sound the younger species rarely heard, a sound that meant an elder had seen something they had not expected, something that reminded them of what they had once been. Veth produced the second document, the framework, detailed methodology, honors both Sethic principle of collective accountability and Carnovian principle of individual intent, parsing command negligence versus direct order, a complete system for judgment built from the 47 codes, cross-referenced against the 2,847 precedents. I have assembled a legal team, Veth said, 3 human scholars, specialists in cultural law, evidence interpretation, xenological precedent. We have prepared a framework for judgment that honors both sides because we understood something 6 months ago. You would ask us to prove ourselves before you would trust us to judge. Sheer shifted. The ancient creature considered, actually considered, his chitinous plates settled. The low-frequency hiss returned but softer, a different register, not challenge, not defense, something closer to respect. You came prepared, Sheer said, for this insult. Veth's answer was immediate. Yes, I prepared because I knew it would come. I prepare because that is what humans do. We anticipate, we organize, we do not panic, we do not rage, we work. The silence that followed was the sound of institutional architecture shifting, not breaking, adjusting. A room that had been built to exclude now struggling to include. The geometry was the same. The meaning was different. Kishir addressed Sheer directly. The accused will accept the human judge. Sheer nodded. The acceptance was a turning point. The chamber did not applaud. The chamber did not speak. The chamber simply recognized that the procedural window with 2 hours remaining had found its judge, not through force, not through argument, through preparation, through work. Saranvel filed the moment. Their hands shook on the tablet. They filed it anyway. They filed it with a note they had never written before. The council has been judged by its own standards, and the judgment is competence. The trial began the next cycle, 7 days. 400,000 words of testimony. Veth read in Archive Vault Corridor 7, surrounded by the 2,847 precedents. The membrane sheet accumulated annotations. The margins filled. The handwriting grew denser. Sleepless cycles passed. Veth did not sleep. Veth worked. On the 3rd day, a Verdian delegate approached Saranvel. The human reads without pause, they said. Is this stamina or desperation? Saranvel considered the question. They filed their answer without judgment. It is preparation. By the 5th day, the observation gallery had changed. Humans still occupied the ledge, but other observers had shifted. Junior observer Ren sat closer. The newest species, watching. Not speaking yet, but watching, learning, understanding that the ledge was not a destination, it was a starting point. On the 6th day, Veth's team arrived. The 3 scholars. They carried the final document, 127 pages, hand-signed by all 4 humans. The framework had become a judgment. The preparation had become proof. Saranvel saw Veth check the index card one final time, the 3 questions never read aloud still guarded in the pocket. Then Veth stood. They walked to the visitor's podium, the 17-centimeter step. The step creaked, but this time the chamber's acoustics had changed. Not physically. Everyone heard it differently. Veth's voice carried weight now. The register that had been dampened by design now filled the space. Because the space had changed, or because Veth had changed it. The judgment was read. It found Sheer's government culpable for the deaths. It distinguished between commanders and soldiers. It imposed sentences. Hard but fair. Both sides accepted without appeal. The moment was not victory. It was precision. It was the sound of work completed correctly. It was the sound of 4,000 years of hierarchy meeting one human who had simply outworked it. The chamber was still. No applause immediately. Just the weight of precedent shifting. Keishier stood. Their bioluminescent scars pulsed in the chamber light. 340 years of service marked on their skin. 340 years of watching younger species rise and fall. "I voted against your suspension," Keishier said, "because I suspected you would do exactly this. You have now proven what I hoped, that your species understands something the elder races have forgotten, that duty is not learned from passion but from preparation. You have earned a seat on this council, not as observers, as full members." The council moved to vote, the restoration of human voting rights. The motion passed, 11-0. Veth stood at the podium. The membrane sheet rested on the surface, annotated, worn, the seal still catching light. They did not smile. They did not bow. They simply filed the judgment into the official record and stepped down. Veth returned to the observation gallery. They sat in the same seat they had occupied for 3 months. They opened the tablet. They returned to the same 47 pages, now bookmarked at a different passage. The work was not finished. It was continuous. The judgment was one case. The preparation was forever. An aide found them there. The aide was young, from a species Saranvel did not recognize. New to the assembly. New enough to still believe in ceremonies. New enough to think that change came with announcements and celebrations. "Dr. Veth," the aide said, "you should celebrate. You changed everything." Veth looked up. Their face did not change. They checked the index card in their pocket, though they did not read it. They put it away. The gesture was automatic, a habit, a preparation for the next moment. "I didn't change anything," Veth said. "I simply refused to confirm what the council expected of me. I prepared, I waited, and when the moment came, I did my job." They paused. They looked at the tablet. The screen showed page 12, the Tuesday page, but every day was Tuesday now. Every day was work. The only thing different now is that they see it. The aide left, confused. Saranvel filed the exchange. They understood it differently than the aide. They were beginning to understand Veth's method, the refusal to perform gratitude, the insistence that the work was ordinary. It was a kind of armor. It was also a kind of truth. The truth that preparation was not heroic. It was simply what you did when you knew the moment would come. The restoration vote happened the next cycle. Not the vote that had already passed. A second vote. The council moved to restore humanity's full membership. Not just voting rights, full seat, full voice. The motion passed 11-0. Elder Pralvel of the Asana Corps did not speak during the vote. They sat in stillness. Their 7 limbs arranged in bilateral symmetry. Their 3 eye clusters arranged in ascending height. Their bioluminescent scars marking 340 years of service pulsed at a frequency Saranvel had learned to read. The pulse was slow. It was not the pulse of resistance. It was the pulse of consideration, of a mind that had seen 4,000 years of moments like this and knew that this one was different. After the vote, Pralvel approached Veth, not in the chamber, in the restoration chamber annex where deliberation happened outside the official record. The annex was small. The acoustics were flat. No podium favored any voice. No lighting favored any skin. It was a room designed for honesty, or for secrets, or for both. "You prepared for an insult," Pralvel said. Their harmonic voice carried the standard register, the register that had governed 4,000 years of council business. "You prepared for a stripping of rights. You prepared for a moment when the council would need you and refuse to ask." Veth stood. They did not step back. They did not step forward. They simply stood at the same height as the elder because the annex had no steps, no 17-centimeter gaps, no geometry of hierarchy. "I prepared for the possibility," Veth said, "not the certainty. And if the moment had not come, then I would have continued preparing." Pralvel's eye clusters focused. The bioluminescent scars brightened. "You hold dual certification," they said. 6 years in archive work. You have memorized 47 foundational codes. You built a team in secret. You cross-referenced 2,847 cases. They paused. The harmonic voice dropped to a lower register, a register that was not standard, a register that was older. You did this knowing the council might never call on you, knowing your species might remain on the ledge forever, knowing the work might never be seen. Yes, Veth said. Why? Veth reached into their inner pocket. The membrane sheet came out, worn at the creases. The human seal pressed so deep it caught the flat light of the annex. Veth held it out, not as proof, not as argument, as answer. Because the work is the work, they said, whether they see it or not. Pralvel took the membrane sheet. Their 7 limbs moved with the slowness of 340 years. They unfolded it along the worn creases. They examined the pressed seal in silence. For a full cycle, they said nothing. They simply looked at the seal, the annotations, the marginal notes compressed from 3 months of refinement. They looked at the handwriting that had accumulated in the margins, the proof of sleepless nights, the proof of method, the proof of a human who had outworked 4,000 years of hierarchy. When they returned the membrane sheet, their harmonic voice carried a different register, a frequency humans were not supposed to hear, a register reserved for species who have earned time, who have earned the right to be spoken to as equals, as elders, as peers. You will hold a permanent position, Pralvel said, supreme judge of contested cases, first human to hold such rank. The council will offer this today. I know, Veth said. You do not seem surprised. I prepared for the possibility. Pralvel's bioluminescent scars pulsed once bright, then settled. Your species, they said, understands something we have forgotten. That preparation is not panic. That method is not coldness. That the ones who prepare are the ones who endure. They turned to leave. They stopped at the door. Their 7 limbs paused in the frame. I dissented in the vote to suspend your rights. I suspected you would prove me right. I did not suspect you would prove it so completely. They left. The annex was quiet. Veth folded the membrane sheet along its creases. They returned it to the pocket. They did not celebrate. They did not speak. They simply stood in the quiet, and the quiet was enough. The quiet was the sound of work acknowledged, of preparation recognized, of a door that had been locked for 4,000 years now standing open. The ceremony happened 3 days later. The council chamber was full. The podiums rose in their precise gradation. The acoustics favored lower voices. But this time a human stood on a podium that had been raised. The 17-centimeter gap was gone. The step no longer creaked. The geometry had been adjusted, not rebuilt, adjusted, because the council had learned that hierarchy could be maintained without exclusion. That tradition could continue without blindness. Veth wore the same gray uniform, no markings, no ceremonial robe, the same uniform they had worn in the gallery, in the corridor, in the vault. Identity flattened by design, now transformed into a statement. The statement that the work did not need decoration, that the judge did not need costume. That preparation was its own garment. Kishir spoke the formal words. Saranvel filed them. The words were old. The meaning was new. The same words that had elevated Verdians and Fraud and Sethic now elevated a human, and the words sounded different, not because they had changed, because the chamber had changed. Veth accepted the position in the same quiet way. No speech, no gratitude. They simply nodded, filed the appointment document, and stepped down. The same step, the same movement, the same method. Junior observer Ren approached afterward. The newest species, no longer the newest. They had found their frequency. They had found their voice. Watching Veth had taught them that waiting was not weakness, that silence was not absence, that preparation was power. I watched you, Ren said. In the gallery, before you stood, I watched you read the same 47 pages for 3 months. I thought you were waiting for permission. I was waiting for the work, Veth said. And now I continue waiting. The work does not stop because the position changes. Ren considered this. They filed it in their own log in their own way. The Sethic delegation, they said, has requested your framework for their own judicial proceedings. They want to use your methodology. They want to learn how a human built a system that honored both sides. Veth looked at them. For a moment something moved in their face. Not surprise, not pride. the slight adjustment of someone who had prepared for a possibility they had not named aloud, the recognition that the work was spreading. That preparation was contagious. That method could travel across species and time. "Tell them the framework is open," Veth said. "Tell them the work is the work. It does not belong to me. It belongs to the next case. It belongs to the next judge. It belongs to anyone who prepares." Saranvel filed this exchange too. They filed it with a note they had never filed before. A note that was not regulation. A note that was observation, pure and simple. The kind of note that would be read 4,000 years from now, when another species arrived and another human prepared. "The framework spreads," Saranvel wrote. "The preparation continues. The ones who prepare are the ones who endure." The days that followed were quiet. Veth worked in the Supreme Judge chambers. They read new cases. They met with the 3 scholars who had helped build the framework. The membrane sheet stayed in the inner pocket, creases deepening, annotations accumulating. The index card with 3 questions stayed in the other pocket, checked before each meeting, never read aloud. One evening, Saranvel found Veth in the observation gallery. The same gallery, the same ledge, the same seat. Veth sat with hands folded. The tablet showed the same 47 pages, bookmarked at a different passage. Page 29. The Wednesday page, but it was not Wednesday. It was the day after the ceremony. The day after the restoration. The day after everything changed. "You return here," Saranvel said. "I return to the work," Veth said. "The council sees you now. The whole assembly sees you." Veth looked up. They looked at the chamber, the podiums, the gradation, the acoustics, the geometry that had encoded hierarchy for 4,000 years, the geometry that had been adjusted but not destroyed. "The chamber is the same," Veth said. "The geometry is the same. The acoustics are the same. The only thing different is that they see it." They paused. They checked the index card. They put it away. And seeing is not the end. Seeing is the beginning. The work continues whether they see it or not. Saranvel filed this. They filed it with the same hands that had shaken 3 months ago. The hands did not shake now. They had learned something from watching. They had learned that preparation was a form of patience. That patience was a form of strength, that the ones who endured were not the ones who shouted. They were the ones who stayed, the ones who worked, the ones who prepared. The membrane sheet came out one more time, not in the chamber, not in the annex, in the archive vault, corridor 7, where the legal code was housed. Veth stood alone, surrounded by the precedents, the codes, the accumulated weight of 4,000 years of law. They unfolded the membrane sheet. They looked at the pressed seal, the annotations, the marginal notes, the proof of 3 months, the proof of 6 years, the proof of a method that had outlasted hierarchy. Then they folded it along its creases. They pressed it flat. They returned it to the pocket. The seal was still there. The work was still there. The preparation was still there. It would be there when the next moment came, and the moment would come. It always came, for the ones who prepared, for the ones who worked, for the ones who endured. The only thing different now was that they saw it. The corridor was quiet. The coolant hummed. The sulfur tang lingered. Veth walked back to the gallery, hands folded, the membrane sheet warm against their side, the 47 pages waiting on the tablet, the steps silent beneath their feet.